"Armed federal agent," she shouted. "Drop your weapons." The men reacted instantly, raising their submachine guns. Catherine fired twice in rapid succession, clean, controlled, exactly as she had trained. The first round struck the lead man's weapon, sending it clattering to the floor. The second round hit the second man's shoulder, spinning him around. She had been formally authorized as a special investigator under Air Force OSI protocol the previous evening, General Hollister's voice steady on the secure line. "Your authority to use force in protection of life and classified evidence is now on the record, Major. God willing you won't need it." She needed it. "Go," Catherine shouted to Bennett and Samantha, who sprinted back toward the elevator. The morning she first broke the sound barrier, Catherine Calloway was 26 years old and already certain the sky was the only place she truly belonged. That was 15 years, 2 combat deployments, and 1 classified Pentagon briefing ago. Now the scream of her F-35 Lightning II ripped through the heavens like a sound God had reserved only for the few who dared, those rare souls forged equally from discipline and instinct, from sacrifice and absolute nerve. Inside the cockpit, oxygen hissed through the mask as she pulled 9GS in a vertical climb. Blood drained from her head, vision narrowing to a pinpoint of light. The weight of 9 times gravity crushed her body into the ejection seat, while her muscles strained against the pressure. This was the moment when most pilots blacked out. But Catherine Calloway was not most pilots. Her voice came controlled through the radio, Lightning 3-1 maintaining vertical, not a tremor in her voice as the altimeter spun like a slot machine. 30,000 feet, 35,000, 40,000. The blue sky outside her canopy darkened to indigo, then black, as the stars appeared in daytime. Then she rolled the aircraft, inverted at the top of her climb, and began the dive back to Earth. The GS reversed direction, blood rushing to her head as she pointed the nose of her $80 million fighter jet straight down, accelerating to supersonic speed. Another day at the office. But that was yesterday. Today the office looked very different. The Meridian Defense Systems headquarters in downtown Chicago gleamed like a dagger of glass and steel thrust into the heart of the financial district. Polished granite floors reflected the morning sunlight through floor-to-ceiling windows. Men and women in tailored suits moved with purposeful steps, badges swinging from lanyards, expensive leather shoes clicking against the stone. The smell of money and ambition hung in the air like cologne. Catherine Calloway stood in the center of the lobby, a solitary figure of stillness in the current of movement. Her brown hair pulled back in a tight, practical ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, just clear eyes constantly scanning, assessing, like she was still in the cockpit running through pre-flight checks. What drew every eye, what caused the ripple of whispers as people passed, was her jacket. Not tailored wool, not designer labels. A flight jacket, olive green, worn at the elbows, patches sewn onto the shoulders and breast. The words USAF F-35 Demo Team emblazoned across the back. A jacket that had seen rain on flight decks and sun in high altitudes. A jacket that smelled faintly of jet fuel and ambition of a different kind. In her hand, a worn leather messenger bag, not a briefcase, not sleek or shiny, practical, ready. She might as well have been wearing a space suit for how out of place she looked. "I'm here to see Harold Bennett," she said to the receptionist, voice calm and measured, the same voice that didn't waver at 9GS. "I have an appointment." The receptionist's eyes lingered on the flight jacket, a flicker of confusion crossing her face before professionalism reasserted itself. "Your name, ma'am?" "Major Catherine Calloway." The words hung in the air, not thrown like a challenge, simply stated as fact. The receptionist's fingers hesitated over her keyboard. Military ID. Catherine slid her identification across the counter without comment. Her face remained neutral, but something in her eyes shifted, a quick assessment and dismissal. The same look she gave to instruments that told her what she already knew. The elevator climbed 50 floors. Catherine stood alone in the center, back straight, hands at her sides. No checking of phones, no fidgeting with hair, just that same calm readiness that defined her in the cockpit. The elevator stopped 5 times. Each time, men and women in suits glanced at her, then away, then back again. A few whispered. One man in his 60s gave her a respectful nod, his eyes finding the patches on her shoulder. Ex-military, she noted. You could always tell. The memory came unbidden as the elevator climbed. The briefing room at the Pentagon just 3 days ago. The smell of old coffee and floor wax. 5 stars on epaulets. Silver hair and serious eyes. General Raymond Hollister, Director of Air Force Intelligence, had not minced words. Major Calloway, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Understood, sir. The general slid a folder across the table. Inside, 3 photographs. 3 young pilots in flight suits. 3 smiling faces. These men died in the past 6 months, all during simulator training on the new Meridian Defense FX-200 platform. Catherine studied the faces, young, confident, now gone. Simulator crashes don't kill pilots, sir, she said. Exactly. Hollister's face was grim. These men executed maneuvers in the simulator that the software said were possible. When they attempted the same maneuvers in actual aircraft, the planes didn't respond as the simulator had trained them. The result was 3 caskets and 3 folded flags. The elevator chimed. 50th floor. The doors opened to reveal a reception area walled in glass. The Chicago skyline spread out like a carpet of miniature buildings below. Catherine stepped out, still carrying the memory of the general's words. We need someone who understands aircraft from the inside out, not just in theory. Someone who can identify what's wrong with the simulator by actually using it. Someone who can find out if these were honest programming errors or something more deliberate. You want me to go undercover at Meridian Defense Systems, Catherine had said. Not a question. They're looking for a technical advisor with flight experience. Your resume has been adjusted. You're now a recently discharged Air Force pilot looking for civilian work. Your real service record will be classified. And if I find something... The general's eyes had hardened. Then we shut them down before more pilots die. The receptionist on the 50th floor was older, more polished than the one in the lobby. Her eyes took in Catherine's flight jacket without judgment. Major Calloway for Mr. Bennett, Catherine said. He's expecting you, through those doors end of the hall. The hallway stretched long, walls of glass on one side showing conference rooms filled with men and women in suits looking at presentations. On the other side, the view of Chicago, buildings stretching to the horizon. Power on display. The weight of money. At the end of the hall, a set of double doors stood open to a corner office large enough to fit a small apartment. Windows on 2 sides. A desk of dark wood that probably cost more than Catherine's car. Behind it sat Harold Bennett, 65 years old with silver hair cut military short. His suit was expensive but simple. No flash, just quality. His face was weathered, eyes sharp. When he stood to greet her, Catherine noticed his posture first. Back straight, shoulders square. The stance of a man who had worn a uniform long enough that it became part of his body. Major Calloway, he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, not the hand of a man who only pushed papers. Thank you for coming. Mr. Bennett. Harold, please, he gestured to a chair. Have a seat. Catherine sat, placing her messenger bag beside her chair. Her eyes scanned the office quickly, professionally. Certificates on the walls, models of aircraft on shelves, and behind Bennett's desk, in a simple frame, a photograph of a younger Bennett in a flight suit standing in front of an F-14 Tomcat. "You flew Tomcats," she said, nodding toward the photo. A smile touched Bennett's face, genuine but brief. "In another life, Gulf War, you have a good eye. Hard to miss the most beautiful aircraft the Navy ever put in the sky." F-35 pilots aren't supposed to say things like that, Bennett said, but his smile widened slightly. "The new jets are technically superior in every way." "Technically," Catherine agreed, "but they don't sing the same song." Something in Bennett's eyes shifted, a brief flash of recognition. The universal language of fighter pilots transcending generations of aircraft. He leaned forward. "Your resume is impressive, Major. 10 years in the Air Force. Flight instructor, combat deployments. Why leave for the private sector?" Catherine had rehearsed this answer. Time to try something new. The Air Force has a way of telling you when you've reached your ceiling. Bennett studied her face for a moment too long. "And your ceiling was, Major, with your qualifications." Catherine held his gaze steady. "Politics isn't my strong suit." "I see," Bennett leaned back. "Well, our loss is the private sector's gain. Do you know what we do here at Meridian?" "You build the best flight simulators in the world," Catherine said. "Commercial and military." "That's what the brochure says," Bennett nodded. "The reality is more complex. We don't just build simulators. We create experiences so real that pilots forget they're not actually flying. The line between simulation and reality has never been thinner." "That's a dangerous line to blur, Mr. Bennett." "Harold," he corrected automatically. "And yes, it can be, but it's also the future. Train pilots to handle extreme situations without risking lives or aircraft. Perfect their responses until they become instinct. Save lives." Catherine kept her face neutral, thinking of the 3 dead pilots in the general's folder. Unless the simulation teaches them the wrong instincts. Bennett's eyes narrowed slightly, but before he could respond, the door to the office opened without a knock. A man strode in with the confidence of someone used to owning rooms. 50 years old, salt and pepper hair styled perfectly. Tan that suggested regular golf outings. A suit that shouted its price tag. His smile was practiced, revealing teeth too white to be natural. "Harold, the duty is on line 2 about the contract extensions." His eyes found Catherine, registering first the flight jacket, then her face. His smile dimmed a few watts. "Sorry, didn't realize you were in a meeting." Bennett straightened in his chair. "Derek Vaughn, this is Major Catherine Calloway. She's interviewing for the technical advisor position. Catherine, Derek is our director of simulation systems." Derek extended his hand, smile firmly back in place. "Military background, excellent. We value that kind of experience." His handshake was too firm, a power move. Catherine matched his pressure exactly, neither yielding nor escalating. His eyes flickered with brief annoyance. "Major Calloway was just about to tell me why she thinks she's qualified for the position," Bennett said. "I flew the aircraft your simulators are modeled after," Catherine said simply. "I know how they respond in situations most test pilots never experience. I know when something feels right and when it doesn't." Derek chuckled, the sound practiced and hollow. "With all due respect, Major, feeling isn't how we build simulators. We use advanced mathematical models, thousands of flight hours of data, wind tunnel testing. It's science, not intuition." Catherine's gaze remained steady. "The best pilots use both." "Well," Derek said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "this isn't a cockpit. It's a corporate environment. Different rules apply." That's enough, Derek, Bennett said quietly. We'll talk about the duty later. Derek nodded, smile fixed in place. Of course. Nice to meet you, Major. Good luck with your interview. He left, closing the door behind him with just enough force to make his displeasure known. Bennett sighed. You'll have to excuse Derek. He's brilliant with software but sometimes lacks perspective. You mean he's never had to trust his life to the code he writes, Catherine said. Bennett's eyes met hers, and for a moment something passed between them. The unspoken understanding that exists between those who have felt their mortality in the thin aluminum skin of an aircraft traveling faster than sound. Exactly, Bennett said softly. Then more formally, let me be direct, Major Calloway. We need someone who can test our simulators from a pilot's perspective. Someone who can push them to their limits and tell us when they don't match real-world performance. It's not glamorous work. You'll spend hours in a box, flying scenarios over and over, providing feedback to engineers who may or may not listen. Will I have direct access to the software team? Bennett hesitated. Eventually, there's a chain of command here just like in the military. And where does Derek fit in that chain? He oversees all simulator development. Bennett's expression was carefully neutral. He reports directly to me. Catherine nodded, processing. When would you need an answer? Bennett glanced at his watch. How about after lunch? I'd like you to see what we're working on. Our newest military simulator is in final testing. The FX-200, it's revolutionary. The name sent a chill through Catherine. The simulator the dead pilots had trained in. She kept her face impassive. I'd like that. Bennett stood. Good. I have a meeting now, but my assistant will show you to the cafeteria. After lunch, meet me in the main simulator bay, 15th floor. As Catherine left Bennett's office, she caught a glimpse of Derek Vaughn watching her from the end of the hall. His eyes followed her all the way to the elevator, calculation written in the set of his jaw. The cafeteria occupied half of the 30th floor, windows offering views of Lake Michigan stretching blue to the horizon. Catherine sat alone at a small table, picking at a salad she didn't want while observing the room around her. Employees clustered in groups, conversations flowing around invisible hierarchies. Occasional laughter, occasional glances her way. She was the only person in the room not wearing a suit. A young woman approached her table, hesitant but determined. Late 20s, red hair pulled back in a professional bun, tablet clutched to her chest like armor. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the new consultant, the pilot?" Catherine nodded once. "Catherine Calloway." "I'm Samantha Briggs, software engineer on the FX-200 project." She gestured to the empty chair. "May I?" Catherine indicated for her to sit. Samantha did, setting her tablet on the table. "I saw your jacket," Samantha continued. "My brother's Air Force, crew chief on C-17s. "Good aircraft," Catherine said. "Reliable." "That's what he says." Samantha leaned forward slightly. "Is it true you flew F-35s?" "Still do, in the reserves." The cover story flowed easily. Samantha's eyes lit up. "That must be incredible." "It has its moments." "I've been working on the flight dynamics model for the F-35 simulator for 8 months, Samantha said. "The mathematical models are fascinating, but I've never actually met someone who's flown one." Catherine studied the young woman, enthusiasm without guile, intelligence in her eyes. "Why are you talking to me, Ms. Briggs?" Samantha blinked, surprised by the directness. I've been having concerns about some of the flight model parameters, the high angle of attack response specifically, but every time I bring it up, I'm told the models are correct according to the data provided by Lockheed." "And you think they're not?" Samantha glanced around, then lowered her voice. I think the data we're using might be incomplete. There are edge cases where the simulator responds in ways that seem wrong. But I'm not a pilot. I don't know what wrong feels like. Catherine set down her fork. Edge cases like what? Like when performing a Cobra maneuver at transonic speeds with asymmetrical weapons loading. Catherine's pulse quickened. One of the dead pilots had crashed attempting exactly that maneuver. That's a highly specialized scenario. But a possible one, right? Samantha pressed. In combat. Possible but extremely dangerous. Most pilots would never attempt it. Unless they'd practiced it successfully in a simulator and thought they could handle it. Samantha's eyes held Catherine's. Theoretical knowledge says the aircraft should respond one way. My instincts as an engineer say something different. Catherine leaned back. What does Derek Vaughn say about your concerns? Samantha's expression clouded. That I should stick to coding and leave the aerodynamics to the specialists. That my instincts don't override years of data collection. The same dismissal of instinct that Derek had shown in Bennett's office. Catherine filed the information away. Are you risking your job talking to me about this? Samantha straightened her shoulders. Probably, but my best friend from college was a Navy pilot. He died 6 months ago in an FA-18. The official report cited pilot error during a high-stress maneuver. He'd been training in our simulators for months before the accident. The first victim from the general's folder. Catherine felt a chill. I'm sorry for your loss. Michael was the best pilot I knew, the most careful. Samantha's voice hardened. He wouldn't have made that kind of error unless he truly believed the aircraft would respond the way he expected. The way the simulator taught him it would respond, Catherine said quietly. Samantha nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Exactly. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken understanding. The simulator bay is on 15, Catherine finally asked. Yes, the military prototypes. Samantha hesitated. If you're testing today, be careful with the high alpha maneuvers, please. Catherine studied the young engineer. Thank you for the warning. Samantha stood, gathering her tablet. I should get back. It was nice meeting you, Major Calloway. She turned to leave, then stopped. If you do find something wrong, there are others on the team who have concerns. We're not all like Derek. Catherine watched her go, mind racing. If the young engineer was right, the simulator was even more dangerous than the general had suggested. Not just occasional glitches, but fundamental flaws in the flight model. Flaws that were being deliberately ignored. The 15th floor was different from the executive levels above. Utilitarian hallways led to reinforced doors with key card access. The smell of electronics and machinery replaced the scent of luxury. This was where the real work happened. Bennett met her outside a door marked FX200 prototype authorized personnel only. His expression was neutral, professional, but Catherine caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Concern, anticipation. Ready to see what we've been working on? He asked. Absolutely. Bennett swiped his badge and the door clicked open. Inside was a large room dominated by a white dome the size of a small house. Around its perimeter, workstations with multiple monitors displayed code, diagrams, and real-time data. Engineers moved between stations, adjusting parameters and conferring in hushed tones. And there was Derek Vaughn, standing at the central control station, watching their entrance with sharp eyes. Major Calloway, he called, voice carrying across the room. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Harold tells me you'll be testing our system today. Catherine nodded once, if that's all right. Of course. His smile was all teeth. We're always eager for feedback, though I should warn you, this isn't like the simulators you're used to. It's an entirely new generation. I look forward to experiencing it. Allow me to explain what you'll be seeing, Derek said, gesturing toward the dome. The FX200 is a full immersion simulator. Once inside, the visual fidelity is indistinguishable from reality. The hydraulic motion platform can simulate up to 3 gs of sustained force and brief moments of up to 6 gs through pressure suit integration. That's impressive, Catherine acknowledged, but still a fraction of what the actual aircraft can pull. True, Derek conceded, but the sensory inputs create a convincing illusion. The mind fills in the gaps. And that's where the danger lies, Catherine thought but didn't say. We'll start you with a standard checkout flight, Derek continued, then progress to more advanced maneuvers if you feel comfortable. Actually, Bennett interjected, I'd like Major Calloway to have free rein once she's oriented. Her value is in testing edge cases. Derek's smile tightened. Of course, Harold, whatever you think is best. He turned to an engineer. Prepare the F-35 module for Major Calloway. As the team prepared the simulator, Catherine took the opportunity to observe the room. The engineers worked with the focused intensity of people who believed in what they were building. But she noticed small things. Glances between team members when Derek spoke. The way some of them looked at her flight jacket with something like hope. Samantha Briggs entered, moving to a workstation in the corner. She met Catherine's eyes briefly, a silent communication passing between them. Your flight suit is in the changing room, Derek said, pointing to a door at the side of the room. When you're ready, we'll begin. The flight suit was new, top of the line. The pressure system designed to help simulate G-forces during high-stress maneuvers. Catherine changed quickly, muscle memory taking over as she secured straps and checked connections. The weight of the suit felt familiar. For a moment, she was back on the flight line, preparing for a real mission. But this wasn't a mission, it was a test, and people had died failing it. When she emerged, the room had shifted focus. All eyes were on her now, the pilot, the test subject, the unknown variable in their carefully calibrated system. This way, Major, Derek said, leading her to the simulator dome. A hatch stood open in its side, revealing a perfect replica of an F-35 cockpit inside. Every switch, every display exactly where it should be. Our proprietary software combines actual flight test data with advanced predictive algorithms, Derek explained as Catherine examined the cockpit. The result is the most accurate flight model ever created. We'll see, Catherine said simply. Derek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We'll start with a standard takeoff from Nellis Air Force Base. The system will guide you through initial familiarization. After that, you're free to fly as you see fit within the test range boundaries. Catherine settled into the seat, the familiar confines of a fighter cockpit enveloping her. Her hands found the controls automatically. Her feet rested on the rudder pedals. The helmet settled onto her head, heavy but balanced. Communications check, came a voice in her ear. Samantha Briggs. Can you hear me, Major Calloway? Loud and clear. I'll be your liaison during the test. If you need anything or notice any anomalies, just let me know. Copy that. The hatch closed with a hydraulic hiss, sealing Catherine in the artificial world. For a moment, darkness. Then the displays came alive. Outside the canopy, the simulator projected a perfect recreation of Nellis Air Force Base. The desert stretched to distant mountains. The sky a flawless Nevada blue. It was, as Derek had promised, indistinguishable from reality. Beginning startup sequence, Catherine said, her hands moving across the panels with practiced precision, each switch exactly where her muscle memory expected, each system responding exactly as it should. The simulated engine rumbled to life. The displays illuminated in sequence. Catherine taxied to the runway, feeling the subtle vibrations through the simulator's motion platform. The illusion was nearly perfect. "Nellie's Tower, Lightning 3-1, ready for takeoff," she said, playing along with the simulation. "Lightning 3-1, Nellie's Tower, you are cleared for takeoff," came the convincingly real response. Catherine advanced the throttle. The simulator tilted back, creating the sensation of acceleration. The rumble intensified, and then she was airborne, climbing into the digital sky. For 10 minutes, she flew standard patterns, banking turns, gentle climbs and descents. The simulator responded perfectly, exactly matching her thousands of hours of experience in the actual aircraft. "The handling feels accurate in standard flight regimes," she reported, beginning more aggressive testing. She took the simulated F-35 into a steep climb, pushing it to the edge of its performance envelope. The simulator tilted back sharply. The pressure suit tightened around her legs and abdomen, simulating the G-forces. "Still perfect, still exactly as expected." "Moving to high angle of attack testing," she announced. This was where the reported problems had occurred, where pilots had learned maneuvers in the simulator that the real aircraft couldn't perform, where simulated success had led to actual death. Catherine pulled the aircraft into a vertical climb, then eased back on the throttle while maintaining back pressure on the stick. The nose of the F-35 rose higher and higher relative to its flight path, 45 degrees, 50, 60. In a real F-35, warning systems would be screaming. The aircraft would be shuddering, fighting against the laws of physics. But the simulator remained smooth, responsive. Too responsive. "I'm noting anomalous behavior in high alpha," Catherine reported. "Aircraft maintaining control authority beyond expected parameters." "The system is functioning within specifications," Derek's voice came through the comm. Catherine ignored him, pushing further. She rolled the aircraft while maintaining the high angle of attack, a maneuver that would send a real F-35 tumbling out of control. The simulator complied smoothly, executing the roll with perfect precision. "Definite anomaly," Catherine said firmly. "This maneuver is not physically possible in an actual F-35. "Our data indicates otherwise, Major," Derek replied, an edge in his voice. "Perhaps your experience is outdated. Try a Cobra at transonic with asymmetrical weapons loading," Samantha suggested quietly in the background, her voice barely audible over the comm. Catherine's pulse quickened. The exact scenario Samantha had mentioned, the maneuver that had killed her friend. "Configuring for asymmetrical load," Catherine reported, using the simulator's touch screen to adjust the weapon's configuration. "Setting up for transonic Cobra maneuver." She brought the simulated aircraft to 750 knots, just below the sound barrier. The simulator hummed around her, the motion platform working hard to maintain the illusion of flight. Then she pulled back sharply on the stick while manipulating the throttle and control surfaces in a precisely timed sequence. The nose of the aircraft shot upward violently, the classic Cobra maneuver pioneered by Russian pilots. In a real F-35 with asymmetrical weapons loading, the aircraft would experience extreme torque and likely depart controlled flight. A pilot might recover with sufficient altitude, but it would be chaotic, violent. In the simulator, the aircraft performed the maneuver perfectly, the nose rising to vertical, then beyond, before smoothly transitioning back to level flight. Not a shudder, not a warning light. perfect control throughout. Deadly perfect. Major Calloway, we're registering extreme flight parameters, Bennett's voice now concerned. Are you intentionally pushing the envelope? I am, Catherine confirmed. And the simulator is giving dangerous feedback. This maneuver should not be possible as executed. In a real aircraft, this would result in loss of control and likely loss of aircraft. The simulation is accurate according to our models, Derek insisted, his voice tight. Catherine pushed harder, taking the simulated jet into a series of maneuvers that crossed the line from difficult to impossible. Each time, the simulator responded with the same unnatural perfection. Each time, she documented the discrepancy, building the case with methodical precision. After 20 minutes of aggressive testing, Catherine had seen enough. I'm terminating the simulation, she announced. I've identified multiple critical discrepancies in the flight model. There was silence on the comms for a moment, then Bennett's voice. Understood, Major. We're opening the hatch now. The projected world faded around her. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing the simulator bay beyond. Catherine removed her helmet and exited the simulator, her face grim. The room was tense. Engineers stood at their stations, eyes moving between her, Bennett, and Derek. Samantha Briggs watched from her console, hope and fear mingled in her expression. Well, Derek demanded, arms crossed defensively. What's your assessment? Catherine looked at Bennett, then at the room of engineers who had built this deadly machine. The simulator is dangerously flawed. It allows pilots to perform maneuvers that are physically impossible in actual aircraft. Worse, it reinforces those maneuvers by providing positive feedback. Clean execution. No warnings. No adverse consequences. That's absurd, Derek snapped. Our models are built on thousands of hours of actual flight data. Your models are wrong, Catherine stated flatly. If a pilot trained in this simulator attempted those same maneuvers in an actual F-35, the result would be catastrophic. Bennett's face had gone still, his eyes sharp. You're certain of this assessment? Absolutely certain, Catherine held his gaze. This simulator will get pilots killed. The room went silent. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I think you're overreacting, Derek said, his voice controlled but tight. You performed, 20 minutes of testing, and you think you found flaws that our team of engineers missed after thousands of hours of development. I didn't miss them. The voice was quiet but firm. Samantha Briggs stood from her workstation, tablet clutched in her hands. I've been documenting these exact discrepancies for months, filing reports, requesting reviews. Every time my concerns were dismissed. All eyes turned to her. Derek's face darkened. This isn't the place for this discussion, Samantha, he warned. When is the place? Samantha demanded. After another pilot dies trying to fly like your simulator taught them to. Bennett raised a hand. That's enough, both of you. He turned to Catherine. Major Calloway, I want a full report of your findings, every discrepancy, every concern. Then to Derek. And I want to see every report Samantha has filed and the responses to those reports. Derek's jaw tightened. Harold, this is unnecessary. The Major is not qualified to evaluate our software models. No, Bennett agreed. But she is qualified to tell us how an F-35 actually flies. And right now, she's telling us our simulator doesn't match that reality. It's more than that, Catherine said quietly. Your simulator isn't just inaccurate. It's dangerously, consistently inaccurate in exactly the scenarios where accuracy matters most. High stress, edge-of-the-envelope maneuvers that pilots would only attempt if they believed they could execute them safely. Are you suggesting this is deliberate? Bennett asked, his voice carefully neutral. Catherine met his eyes. I'm saying the pattern of inaccuracies is too consistent to be coincidental. The implication hung in the air, not just flaws, sabotage. Derek Vaughan's face had gone pale beneath his tan. This is outrageous. You're accusing us of intentionally creating dangerous software. Based on what evidence? Based on 3 dead pilots, Catherine thought but didn't say. Instead, I'm reporting what I observed. The simulator teaches pilots to execute maneuvers that would kill them in a real aircraft. Whether that's by design or incompetence isn't for me to determine. Bennett's expression was unreadable. We'll continue this discussion in my office. Major Calloway, Derek, Samantha, the rest of you continue your work. He turned to the door, not waiting to see if they followed. As Catherine walked toward the door, she felt eyes on her back. Some hostile, some hopeful, the weight of lives at stake pressing down like G-forces. This wasn't just a job anymore. It wasn't just a cover story. Something deadly was happening at Meridian Defense Systems, something that had already claimed 3 lives. And Catherine Calloway was now in the center of it, alone, with only her instincts to guide her. Just like in the cockpit at 40,000 feet, except the enemy wasn't across the border or beyond the horizon. The enemy might be walking beside her, smiling while plotting her destruction. The elevator ride to Bennett's office was silent, tense. Derek stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Samantha kept her eyes on her tablet, shoulders tight. Bennett stood with military stillness, his thoughts hidden behind years of practice control. Catherine maintained her own silence, mind racing through possibilities and plans. If her suspicions were correct, if Derek or others at Meridian were deliberately sabotaging the simulator, then her cover might already be blown. The general's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one until you have proof. The doors opened on the 50th floor. Bennett led them down the now familiar hallway to his office. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting golden rectangles across the polished floor, so different from the artificial light of the simulator bay. Reality versus simulation, truth versus deadly illusion. Bennett closed the door behind them once they were all inside. Sit down, all of you. They sat. Bennett remained standing, moving to look out the window at the city below. His reflection in the glass showed a face carved from stone. Samantha, he said without turning, show me these reports you've been filing. Samantha handed her tablet to Bennett. 6 months of documented anomalies in the flight model, all dismissed or downgraded in priority. Bennett scrolled through the tablet, his expression unchanging. And who reviews these reports, Derek? Derek shifted in his chair. My team evaluates all software discrepancy reports for validity and prioritization. Your team, Bennett repeated, not you personally. I oversee the process, but given the volume of reports across all our projects, I can't personally review every single one. Bennett set the tablet down. Convenient. He turned to Catherine. Major Calloway, in your professional opinion, could the discrepancies you observed result in aircraft loss if a pilot trained in our simulator attempted those maneuvers in an actual F-35? Without question, Catherine said firmly. The simulator is teaching pilots that the aircraft can safely perform maneuvers that would, in reality, result in loss of control and likely loss of aircraft. And you believe this is a pattern, not isolated incidents. The pattern is clear. The simulator consistently overestimates control authority and underestimates adverse yaw in high angle of attack situations. It's not random, it's systemic. Bennett nodded slowly, then turned to Derek. His voice when he spoke was deadly quiet. 3 pilots have died in the past 6 months attempting maneuvers they practiced in our simulators. 3 young men with families, with futures, now their names on memorial walls. Derek paled visibly. What? I wasn't informed of any connection between our simulators and actual crashes. Weren't you? Bennett asked, his voice still quiet. Because Samantha's friend Michael was one of them, and his crash report specifically cited a high angle of attack maneuver with asymmetrical weapons loading. Exactly the scenario she's been flagging in her reports for months. The room went silent. Samantha's eyes filled with tears, but she held herself rigidly upright, refusing to break. Harold, I swear I didn't know, Derek insisted. If I had, I would have. Would have what? Bennett cut him off. Suddenly started taking these reports seriously, after dismissing them for months, after calling Major Calloway unqualified just 30 minutes ago when she identified the exact same issues. Derek had no answer. His eyes darted between Bennett and Catherine, calculations running behind them. Bennett turned back to the window. Here's what's going to happen. As of this moment, all FX200 simulators are offline. No exceptions. Major Calloway will work directly with Samantha and her team to identify and document every discrepancy in the flight model. Derek, you will provide them full access to all code, all data, all documentation, and you will do so without interference. Harold, be reasonable, Derek protested. Taking the simulators offline will cost millions. We have contractual obligations. Bennett turned, his eyes cold. I'd rather lose millions than another pilot. The shareholders won't see it that way, Derek warned. The board will have questions. Let them ask. Bennett's voice was steel. I've buried enough friends in my lifetime, Derek. I won't bury any more because of software we built. What about the due D? Derek asked, trying a different angle. They're expecting delivery of the first production units in 3 weeks. They'll wait, Bennett said firmly. Better late than lethal. Derek stood, adjusting his suit jacket with hands that weren't quite steady. I need to inform the executive team about this decision. Do that, Bennett agreed. But understand this, Derek. If I find out you knew about these issues and ignored them or worse, covered them up, there will be consequences, not just professional ones. The threat hung in the air between them, unmistakable. Derek left without another word, closing the door behind him with careful control. When he was gone, Bennett seemed to deflate slightly, the rigid military posture softening. He sat heavily in his chair, looking suddenly older. Samantha, give us the room for a moment, please. Samantha nodded, gathering her tablet. What should I tell the team? Tell them the truth, Bennett said. The FX200 is offline for emergency review. All data is to be preserved. No code changes without documented approval. He managed a small smile. And tell them they were right to be concerned. That's going to matter to them. After Samantha left, Bennett turned his attention to Catherine. His eyes were tired but sharp. You're not just a recently discharged Air Force pilot looking for work in the private sector, are you, Major Calloway? Catherine hesitated, weighing her options. Bennett had just taken her side against his own executive, had shut down a multi-million-dollar project based on her assessment. But the general's warning remained. Trust no one until you have proof. What makes you say that? She asked carefully. Bennett's smile was sad. Because I know what a pilot on a mission looks like. I've been one myself. The way you assessed the room, the way you documented the simulator's flaws, methodical, professional, like you were gathering evidence, not just testing software. He leaned forward. Who sent you, Major? Air Force Intelligence, DCIS, the FBI. Catherine kept her expression neutral. I'm just doing the job I was hired to do, Mr. Bennett. Harold, he corrected automatically, then sighed. All right, keep your secrets for now, but understand this. If there's something wrong with our simulators, something deliberate, I want it found and fixed, whatever it costs, whoever it implicates. His eyes held hers. Even if it's me. Catherine studied him, looking for deception and finding none. Why would it be you? It wouldn't, Bennett said simply. But I want you to know that no one is off limits in this investigation. Follow the evidence wherever it leads. Investigation. He'd said the word she hadn't. Confirmation that he knew more than he was saying. Catherine decided to take a calculated risk. And if the evidence leads to Derek Vaughn? Bennett's expression hardened. Derek is brilliant, ambitious, driven. He's also arrogant and too concerned with the bottom line. He paused. But would he deliberately create flaws that could kill pilots? I don't know, I hope not. Hope isn't evidence, Catherine said quietly. No, it isn't, Bennett stood. You'll have an office on the engineering floor starting tomorrow, full access to the simulator and all related systems. Samantha will be your primary contact on the technical side. He hesitated. Be careful, Major. If someone is deliberately sabotaging our simulators, they won't appreciate you uncovering their work. Catherine nodded once. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can, Bennett agreed. But this isn't a cockpit. You don't have missiles or countermeasures here, just your wits and your judgment. Sometimes that's enough, Catherine said. Bennett walked her to the door. I hope so, Major, for all our sakes. The sun was setting as Catherine left the Meridian Defense Systems building, painting the glass towers of Chicago in shades of orange and gold. The city was transitioning from day to night, workers streaming from buildings toward trains and buses, toward homes and families. Catherine walked alone, the leather messenger bag slung across her shoulder, flight jacket zipped against the evening chill. Her mind replayed the day's events, cataloging information, identifying patterns, planning her next moves. 3 dead pilots, deliberately flawed software, Derek Vaughn and his dismissal of concerns, Bennett and his apparent commitment to finding the truth, Samantha Briggs and her quest for justice for her friend. And somewhere in that web of people and motives, a killer hiding behind lines of code. Catherine's phone buzzed in her pocket, a text message from an unknown number, secure call, 2100 hours. The general, checking in, wanting an update on day 1 of her mission. She would have much to report, evidence of deliberate sabotage, potential suspects, allies within the company, but most importantly, confirmation that the threat was real, that more pilots would die if the simulator reached production. As she walked, Catherine felt eyes on her back, a prickling sensation between her shoulder blades, the feeling familiar from combat zones and hostile territories. She didn't turn to look, didn't break stride, just noted the feeling and continued walking, alert but not alarmed. This was a different kind of battlefield. The enemies wore suits instead of uniforms. The weapons were software code instead of missiles, but the stakes were just as high. Lives hung in the balance, and Catherine Calloway, fighter pilot turned undercover operative, was once again on the front lines. Just as the general had planned. The mission had begun. Catherine Calloway stood at the window of her temporary apartment, watching the Chicago skyline shimmer in the darkness. 27 floors up, the city spread before her like a circuit board, pulses of light flowing through the arteries of streets. So different from the view she was accustomed to, staring down at clouds from 40,000 feet, the curve of the earth visible on the horizon. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. Hair down now, freed from the tight ponytail she wore during the day. The severe professional replaced by a woman with tired eyes and too many secrets. On the kitchen counter behind her, a secure satellite phone connected to a scrambler lay silent after her debriefing with General Hollister. Their conversation replayed in her mind as she turned from the window. "They're definitely hiding something," she had told him. "The simulator's flight model has been deliberately modified to allow maneuvers that would be fatal in a real aircraft." "Do you have proof it was deliberate?" the general had asked, his voice distorted by the encryption. "Not yet, but the pattern is too consistent to be coincidental. Someone wanted those simulators to teach pilots they could safely perform maneuvers that would kill them." "And Bennett, is he involved?" Catherine had hesitated. "Unclear. He shut down the simulator program as soon as I identified the flaws. Either he's genuinely concerned or he's putting on an impressive show." "Trust no one, Major," Hollister had reminded her. "Whoever is behind this has already killed 3 pilots. They won't hesitate to remove any threat to their operation." Now, alone in the silence of her apartment, Catherine moved to a small table where her messenger bag lay open. Inside, beyond the personal items, a hidden compartment contained the tools of her real mission: a specialized tablet with military-grade encryption, a compact sidearm with a sound suppressor, a set of lock picks disguised as ordinary keys. The weapons of espionage rather than aerial combat. Catherine removed the tablet, activating it with a 16-digit code. The screen illuminated with the personnel files she'd been studying. Derek Vaughn, Director of Simulation Systems, 20 years at Meridian Defense Systems. Previously worked for defense contractors developing targeting systems. Divorced twice. Heavy debt despite his substantial salary. Gambling problem, carefully concealed but documented in the general's files. A man with motives and opportunity. Harold Bennett, retired Navy captain, 38 combat missions over Iraq, founding member of Meridian Defense Systems, widowed 5 years ago, clean financial records, impeccable military service. A man with principles, or so it appeared. Samantha Briggs, software engineer, 29 years old, top of her class at MIT, recruited by Meridian 3 years ago specifically for the FX200 project. Friend of Michael Tanner, the first pilot killed in a simulator-related crash. A potential ally, or a very convincing actor. Catherine closed the files and leaned back in her chair. Tomorrow she would begin her formal investigation of the simulator systems. She would have access to code, data, and the engineers who built the deadly machine. Somewhere in that mass of information was the evidence she needed, the proof of deliberate sabotage, the identity of those responsible. And the answer to the most important question of all: why would anyone deliberately design simulators that would kill America's fighter pilots? The next morning dawned gray and cold, a low ceiling of clouds pressing down on the city. Catherine arrived at Meridian headquarters early, her flight jacket zipped against the chill. The lobby was quiet, only a handful of employees moving through security. The same receptionist from yesterday glanced up as Catherine approached, recognition flashing across her face. "Good morning, Major Calloway. Mr. Bennett left instructions that you're to have a permanent badge." She slid a key card across the counter. "This will give you access to the engineering levels and the simulator bay." Catherine took the badge, noting that it had already been prepared with her photo. "Thank you." "You're on 14, the receptionist continued. "Office 1412, Ms. Briggs is expecting you." The elevator ride was silent, the car empty except for Catherine. As the doors closed, she allowed herself a moment of tactical assessment. Bennett had moved quickly, arranging office space and access. Either he was genuinely committed to fixing the problem, or he was setting a trap, giving her enough rope to hang herself. Either way, she would proceed with caution. The 14th floor was bustling with activity despite the early hour. Engineers huddled around workstations, conversations abruptly pausing as Catherine walked past in her flight jacket, the military outsider in their technical domain. Some gazes were curious, some hostile, some hopeful. Office 1412 was a small corner space with glass walls overlooking the engineering floor. Inside, Samantha Briggs was already working, multiple monitors displaying code and diagrams that Catherine recognized as flight model algorithms. Major Calloway, Samantha said, standing as Catherine entered. "Good morning." "Catherine, please," she corrected, setting her messenger bag on a chair. "We'll be working closely. Military formality will just slow us down." Samantha nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "Catherine, then, I've been pulling the flight model data from all the test sessions where anomalies were reported, including yours from yesterday." She gestured to one of the monitors. "The pattern is even more obvious when you see it laid out chronologically." Catherine moved closer, studying the data. Graphs showing control response curves, numbers representing coefficients and variables she recognized from her flight dynamics training, and highlighted in red the discrepancies Samantha had identified. "The model consistently overestimates control authority in high-alpha scenarios," Samantha explained, "and it understates induced drag during asymmetric loading." Her finger traced a curve on one of the graphs. "A real aircraft would depart controlled flight here, but the simulator allows the maneuver to continue smoothly." "Exactly what I felt in the simulator," Catherine confirmed. "The aircraft responded with impossible precision, no buffeting, no warning signs that would tell a pilot they were approaching the edge of the envelope." "I've been trying to trace when these changes were introduced," Samantha said, pulling up a timeline on another monitor. "The initial flight model was accurate. I've compared it to NASA wind tunnel data and actual flight test telemetry. It matched reality within acceptable parameters." "When did it change?" "That's where it gets strange," Samantha said, frowning. "The changes appeared gradually over months. Small adjustments to coefficients, tweaks to the drag model, modifications to the control response algorithms. Each change individually would be hard to detect, but cumulatively. They created a simulator that would kill pilots," Catherine finished quietly. Samantha nodded, her expression grim. "Exactly. Who had access to make these changes?" "That's the problem. Dozens of engineers work on the flight model. Each has authority to make changes within their area of expertise." Samantha pulled up another screen showing a complex workflow diagram. "Changes are supposed to be peer-reviewed and tested, but in practice, with the deadlines we were under, things slipped through," Catherine surmised. "Or were deliberately pushed through," Samantha countered. "Some of these changes were approved after hours, when most of the team had gone home. Others were buried in massive code updates with hundreds of modifications." Catherine studied the data, her tactical mind recognizing the pattern. Deliberate obfuscation, hiding the important changes among trivial ones. "Exactly," Samantha agreed. "And here's the really concerning part." She pulled up a personnel file. "All of the most significant modifications were reviewed and approved by this engineer, Robert Chen. Except—" "Except what?" Samantha's expression was troubled. "Robert left the company 8 months ago, took a job back in Taiwan. His family is from Taipei, but his credentials continued to approve changes for weeks after his departure." Catherine felt her pulse quicken. Someone was using his login to make unauthorized changes. "That's my theory," Samantha confirmed. "I only discovered it last night, digging through the approval logs." Did you tell anyone? Samantha shook her head. Only you. I wasn't sure who to trust. Catherine nodded slowly. Good instinct. Let's keep this between us for now. She studied the data again. We need to identify everyone who had access to Chen's credentials after he left. That won't be easy, Samantha warned. Our systems aren't designed to track who logs in as someone else. It's technically against policy, but in practice. Engineers share logins, Catherine finished, especially when deadlines loom. Exactly. Catherine was about to respond when a knock on the glass wall of the office interrupted them. Both women looked up to see Derek Vaughn standing in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. Major Calloway, he said with a tight smile. Ms. Briggs, I trust you're getting settled in. Catherine straightened, her body language shifting subtly to a more defensive posture. We're making progress, Mr. Vaughn. Derek, please, he insisted with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We're all on the same team here. Are we? Catherine asked quietly. Derek's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before reasserting itself. Of course, no one wants flawed simulators deployed, least of all me. He stepped further into the office. Harold asked me to check if you have everything you need for your investigation. We have access to the data, Catherine confirmed, and the simulator itself. Excellent. Derek glanced at Samantha's monitors, his eyes scanning the information displayed there. What have you found so far? Samantha quickly minimized the screen showing Robert Park's credentials, but not before Derek had seen it. A flicker of something dark passed across his face. We're still assembling the data, Catherine said smoothly, moving slightly to position herself between Derek and the monitors. Too early for conclusions. Derek nodded slowly. Of course, these investigations take time. He checked his watch. I have a meeting with the executive team in 20 minutes to discuss the simulator shutdown. They'll want a timeline for resolution. We can't provide that yet, Catherine said firmly. I understand, Derek replied, but the board will want assurances that this is being handled expeditiously. Millions in contracts are at stake. Lives are at stake, Catherine corrected. Derek's expression hardened momentarily before he regained his composure. Of course, that's the priority. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. By the way, Samantha, IT mentioned some unusual database queries from your account last night, accessing personnel records from prior years. Samantha paled slightly but kept her voice steady. Part of the investigation, tracing when changes to the flight model began. Derek studied her for a moment. I see. Well, in the future, please coordinate such queries through proper channels, security protocols, and all that. His smile returned, cold and professional. Good luck with your investigation. After he left, Catherine waited a full minute before speaking, keeping her voice low. He knows we're looking at Chen's credentials. Samantha nodded, her face still pale. And he just warned me that he's monitoring my database access. Change your approach, Catherine advised. Use different queries, be less direct. Make it look like you're investigating something else entirely. What about the credentials issue? Catherine considered their options. We need a list of everyone who might have had access to Park's login after he left. Can you get that without triggering more security alerts? Samantha thought for a moment. I can check the physical access logs for his office after his departure date. Anyone who entered might have had access to his workstation where credentials could have been stored. Do it, Catherine said, but be careful if Derek is involved. He'll be watching, Samantha finished. They worked through the morning, carefully building their case while avoiding direct queries that might alert Derek or his team. Catherine reviewed flight test data from the 3 crashed aircraft, comparing them to simulator sessions the pilots had completed before their fatal flights. The pattern was unmistakable. In each case, the pilots had attempted maneuvers that the simulator had taught them were safe, only to discover too late that reality disagreed. Around noon, Bennett appeared at their door. "How's it going?" he asked, his expression betraying genuine concern. Catherine gestured for him to enter and close the door. Once he had, she spoke in a low voice. "We've confirmed the pattern of deliberate modifications to the flight model. Someone systematically altered the simulator to teach pilots they could safely perform maneuvers that would kill them in a real aircraft." Bennett's face darkened. "You're certain it was deliberate?" "Beyond reasonable doubt," Catherine confirmed. "The changes were introduced gradually over months, carefully hidden among routine updates." "Do you know who?" Catherine glanced at Samantha, who nodded slightly. "We have a lead," Catherine said carefully. "Someone was using a former employee's credentials to approve changes after he left the company." Bennett's eyebrows rose. "Robert Chen." Both women stared at him in surprise. Bennett smiled grimly. "I may be management now, but I was a fighter pilot first. I noticed things." Chen left suddenly. No goodbye party, no transition period. Just gone one day with no explanation. It struck me as odd. "Did you investigate?" Catherine asked. "I asked Derek about it," Bennett admitted. "He said Chen had a family emergency, had to get back to Taipei immediately. I had no reason to doubt him at the time." Catherine filed this information away. "We need to know who had access to Chen's credentials after he left." Bennett nodded thoughtfully. "I can help with that. Security keeps logs of all badge access. If someone was entering Park's office or workspace after his departure, there would be a record." He glanced at his watch. "I have to attend the executive meeting now. Derek will be presenting his assessment of the situation." "What will you tell them?" Catherine asked. "The truth," Bennett said simply. "That we've identified serious flaws in the simulator that may have contributed to 3 pilot deaths. That we've brought in an expert to help identify the cause and fix the problems." "They'll be concerned about the contracts," Catherine warned. Bennett's expression hardened. "Let them be concerned. I won't rush this investigation to meet financial targets." After he left, Catherine and Samantha exchanged glances. "Do you trust him?" Samantha asked quietly. Catherine considered the question. "Not completely, but his actions so far align with someone who genuinely wants to fix the problem. Or someone who's very good at appearing concerned while monitoring our investigation," Samantha countered. "True," Catherine acknowledged. "We keep our guard up with everyone." They continued working through the afternoon, diving deeper into the modified code. Samantha was able to identify specific changes that had rendered the simulator dangerously inaccurate. Catherine documented each discrepancy, building a case that would be impossible to dismiss as coincidence or error. As the day wore on, Catherine noticed a change in the engineering floor outside their glass-walled office. Engineers gathered in small groups, conversations conducted in low voices, glances directed their way with increasing frequency. "Something's happening," Catherine noted. "The mood has shifted." Samantha looked up from her monitor, observing the floor. "You're right, everyone seems tense." A young engineer Catherine hadn't met before appeared at their door, knocking hesitantly. "Ms. Briggs, do you have a moment?" Samantha waved him in. "What is it, Jason?" The engineer, barely out of college by the look of him, closed the door behind him. "There's a rumor going around that Park's credentials were compromised, that someone used them to make unauthorized changes to the flight model." Samantha shot a concerned glance at Catherine. Where did you hear that? It's all over the floor, Jason said. Derek called an emergency meeting with the senior engineers about an hour ago. No one saying exactly what was discussed, but afterwards, he trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Afterwards what? Catherine prompted. They started pulling access logs, checking who was in the building after hours, reviewing security camera footage. Jason swallowed nervously. It feels like they're hunting for someone. Catherine's tactical instincts shifted to high alert. Thank you for telling us, Jason. Is there anything else? The young engineer hesitated, then lowered his voice further. Derek specifically mentioned your investigation, said you were making irresponsible accusations, and that the executive team was concerned about the impact on company reputation. Samantha's face paled. He's trying to discredit us before we can present our findings. Catherine nodded, mind racing through options. Classic counterintelligence tactic: control the narrative, cast doubt on the investigators. What do we do? Samantha asked. Catherine made a quick decision. We accelerate our timeline. How much evidence have we compiled so far? Samantha gestured to her monitors. Enough to prove the simulator is dangerously flawed. Enough to show the changes were deliberate, but not enough to definitively identify who made them. That will have to be enough for now, Catherine said. We need to secure what we have before anyone can alter or delete it. I can create an encrypted backup, Samantha offered. Store it off the company servers. Do it, Catherine instructed. And then we need to brief Bennett. If Derek is moving against us, we need to get ahead of him. As Samantha began the backup process, Catherine moved to the glass wall of their office, observing the engineering floor with a fighter pilot's situational awareness. The mood had definitely shifted. Engineers moved with purpose, conversations conducted in whispers. And there, at the far end of the floor, Derek Vaughn stood with two men Catherine didn't recognize. All three were looking directly at their office. Catherine stepped back from the glass. We have company coming, Derek and two others heading this way. Samantha looked up from her computer, eyes wide. The backup isn't complete yet. I need another 5 minutes. Keep working, Catherine instructed. I'll handle them. Catherine positioned herself by the door, body relaxed but ready. The stance of a fighter pilot preparing for engagement. Not afraid, but alert to every possibility, every angle of attack. Derek arrived first, the two men flanking him like wingmen in a combat formation. One wore a security uniform. The other, a suit nearly as expensive as Derek's own. Major Calloway, Derek said without preamble. This is Frank Garrett, our head of security, and Lawrence Mills, Meridian's legal counsel. Catherine nodded to each man in turn, her expression neutral. Gentlemen. Mr. Vaughn has brought some concerning activities to our attention, the lawyer said, his voice professionally detached. Unauthorized access to personnel files, improper use of company resources, potentially defamatory accusations. I'm conducting an investigation authorized by Harold Bennett, Catherine replied calmly. All of my actions fall within that scope. Mr. Bennett exceeded his authority, the lawyer countered. The board has not approved a formal investigation that could expose the company to liability. Behind them, Samantha continued working on her backup, fingers flying across the keyboard. 3 pilots are dead, Catherine said, her voice hardening. If you're more concerned about liability than preventing more deaths, you have bigger problems than my investigation. Derek stepped forward, his expression tight with controlled anger. The issue, Major Calloway, is not the investigation itself. It's the reckless manner in which you're conducting it, making accusations without evidence. accessing restricted files, creating panic among my engineers. I haven't made any public accusations, Catherine pointed out, and the only panic I'm seeing is coming from your direction, Mr. Vaughn. The security director spoke for the first time. Ms. Briggs, please step away from the computer. Samantha froze, the backup progress bar at 87%. That won't be necessary, came a new voice from the doorway. Harold Bennett stood there, his expression thunderous. What exactly is happening here, Derek? Derek turned, momentarily thrown off balance by Bennett's appearance. Harold, the legal team has concerns about the methodology of this investigation, the access to restricted files, the disruption to the engineering team. So you brought security and legal to what? Shut it down. Bennett's voice was dangerously quiet, without consulting me. The board expressed concerns, the lawyer interjected smoothly. They felt immediate action was warranted to protect company interests. I just came from the board meeting, Bennett said coldly. They authorized me to pursue this investigation by any means necessary. So unless you're suggesting the board is contradicting itself within the same hour, someone is misrepresenting their position. Uncertainty flickered across the lawyer's face. He glanced at Derek, who had gone very still. There must be a misunderstanding, Derek said, recovering quickly. We were simply ensuring proper protocols were being followed. By intimidating my investigators, Bennett asked. By interrupting their work at a critical juncture, he stepped fully into the office. Frank Lawrence, I appreciate your diligence, but your services aren't required here. I'll take full responsibility for Major Calloway's investigation and methods. The security director hesitated, glancing between Bennett and Derek. Then he nodded once. Understood, sir. My apologies for the disruption. The lawyer was less easily dissuaded. Mr. Bennett, I must advise you that proceeding without proper documentation creates significant liability exposure for Meridian. Your concern is noted, Bennett said firmly. Now please excuse us. We have an investigation to continue. After a moment of tension, both men departed, leaving only Derek standing defiantly in the office. This isn't over, Harold, he said quietly. The board will hear about this. I'm counting on it, Bennett replied. In fact, I've scheduled a full briefing for tomorrow morning. Major Calloway and Ms. Briggs will present their findings directly to the board. His eyes hardened. All of their findings, Derek, unfiltered and unedited. Derek's face betrayed a flicker of genuine fear before his professional mask reasserted itself. Of course, transparency is essential. He straightened his tie, a nervous gesture. If you'll excuse me, I have matters to attend to. After he left, Bennett closed the door and turned to Catherine and Samantha. Are you both all right? Samantha nodded, visibly shaken but composed. Yes, thank you for intervening. What happened at the board meeting? Catherine asked. I presented our preliminary findings, Bennett explained. The evidence of deliberate modifications to the flight model, the correlation with the 3 crashes. The board was appropriately alarmed and authorized a full investigation. Derek doesn't seem pleased with that outcome, Catherine observed. No, he doesn't, Bennett agreed grimly, which makes me even more suspicious of his involvement. He glanced at Samantha's monitors. What have you found? Samantha checked her computer. The backup had completed successfully. We've documented the pattern of changes, identified when they were introduced, and confirmed they were approved using Robert Park's credentials after he left the company. But we haven't positively identified who used those credentials, Catherine added, though Derek's reaction suggests he has something to hide. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. The board briefing is at 9 tomorrow morning. Can you prepare a comprehensive presentation by then? We'll work through the night if necessary, Catherine confirmed. Good, Bennett checked his watch. It's almost 6. Most of the staff will be leaving soon. I suggest you continue your work here for another hour, then relocate to my office. It's more secure, and I have direct access to the executive server where sensitive files are stored. Including the security logs, Catherine asked. Bennett smiled grimly. Including the security logs. If someone used Park's credentials, we'll find out who. After Bennett left, Catherine and Samantha continued their work with renewed urgency. The confrontation with Derek had raised the stakes considerably. What had begun as an investigation into software flaws had escalated into something more dangerous, more personal. "He's scared," Samantha said quietly as she organized their findings. "Derek, I've never seen him like that before." "Fear makes people unpredictable," Catherine replied. "We need to be prepared for anything." They worked in focused silence for the next hour, compiling their evidence into a presentation that would be impossible to dismiss. As the engineering floor gradually emptied, the tension in their small office grew. The glass walls that had seemed transparent now felt exposed, making them visible targets. At 7, Bennett returned to escort them to his office. They gathered their materials quickly, Samantha carrying her laptop with the encrypted backup. The hallway was eerily quiet as they made their way to the elevator. Most of the staff had departed, leaving only security personnel and a few dedicated engineers working late. The elevator carried them to the 50th floor in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Bennett's office was exactly as Catherine remembered it from her interview. Spacious, immaculate, windows on 2 sides showing the Chicago skyline now glittering with lights against the night sky. Bennett locked the door behind them and gestured to the conference table at one side of the room. "Make yourselves comfortable," he said. "No one will disturb us here." For the next 3 hours, they worked steadily, building their case. Bennett provided access to files even Samantha couldn't reach, including security logs that confirmed someone had indeed been accessing Robert Park's former office and workstation long after his departure. "Look at this," Bennett said, pointing to a pattern in the access records. "Late-night entries, always between midnight and 2 a.m., always on days preceding major code updates to the flight model." Catherine studied the logs. "Can you pull up the security camera footage from those nights?" Bennett shook his head. "Unfortunately, video is only retained for 60 days. These logs go back 8 months. "Who authorized the badge access during those times?" Catherine asked. Bennett typed a command, pulling up additional data. The system shows the authorizing manager as me. His face registered genuine shock. "That's impossible. I never approved after-hours access to Chen's workspace." "Someone forged your authorization," Catherine suggested. "Or had access to my credentials," Bennett countered grimly. "Either way, we've found our smoking gun. Someone deliberately used Chen's credentials to modify the flight model and used my authority to gain physical access to do it." Samantha's fingers flew over her keyboard, correlating the dates of the late-night access with the modifications to the flight model. "Perfect match," she confirmed. "Every significant change to the flight parameters occurred within 24 hours of one of these unauthorized access events." Catherine felt the satisfaction of pieces falling into place. "So we have proof the modifications were deliberate. Proof someone used credentials they shouldn't have had access to. The only missing piece is the identity of that someone." "And motive," Bennett added. "Why would anyone deliberately create simulators that would get pilots killed?" The question hung in the air between them. The answer had to be more than simple negligence or cost-cutting. This was sabotage, deliberate and deadly, but to what end? As the clock approached 11, Samantha's laptop chimed with an incoming message. She opened it, read quickly, and looked up with wide eyes. "It's from Jason, the engineer who warned us earlier," she explained. "He says Derek ordered the entire flight model database archived and replaced with a previous version. All our evidence of the modifications is being erased from the system as we speak." Bennett's face darkened with anger. "He's destroying evidence." "Not all of it," Catherine reminded them. "We have Samantha's backup and the security logs showing unauthorized access," Bennett added, "but without the actual code showing the modifications." "The case is circumstantial," Catherine finished. "Suspicious but not definitive." Bennett stood abruptly. "I'm calling security. This stops now." Before he could reach the phone, the power in the office went out. The lights died. The computers went dark. For a moment, they sat in complete darkness, illuminated only by the city lights streaming through the windows. "What the hell?" Bennett muttered. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the office in an eerie red glow. In the distance, alarms began to sound. "That's the fire system," Bennett said, moving to the door. He tried the handle. "Locked. The electronic security system has failed closed." Catherine's combat instincts kicked into high gear. "This isn't a coincidence. Someone wants us trapped up here." Samantha clutched her laptop. "The backup. It's the only copy of the evidence now." Bennett moved to his desk, removing a key from his pocket. He unlocked a drawer and pulled out a satellite phone. "Building systems may be down, but this doesn't rely on local infrastructure." He dialed quickly, speaking in clipped tones. "This is Harold Bennett, authorization Bravo Tango 79. I need to report a security breach at Meridian headquarters. Possible sabotage. 3 personnel trapped on the 50th floor during a suspicious power outage." As Bennett spoke, Catherine moved to the windows, surveying the building and surrounding area. Other floors still had power, only their level was dark. In the street below, she could see people exiting the building, responding to the fire alarm. And there, near the side entrance, a car with its engine running. 2 men standing beside it, looking up at the building. "We have company," she said quietly. "Street level east side. Black sedan with 2 men watching the building." Bennett joined her at the window, still holding the satellite phone. "Security team is on the way. ETA 15 minutes. "We may not have 15 minutes, Catherine warned. "This isn't a random power outage. It's targeted. Someone wants to make sure we don't make it to that board meeting tomorrow with our evidence intact." As if confirming her assessment, smoke began seeping under the office door. Not the thick black smoke of an actual fire, but the white chemical smoke of a smoke grenade. "They're trying to flush us out," Catherine said, instantly recognizing the tactic from her military training. Bennett moved quickly to his desk again, retrieving a small key card from the same drawer that had held the satellite phone. "There's a service elevator on the west side of the building. Maintenance and security use only. It has its own power system, independent of the main grid." The smoke was growing thicker, filling the office with its acrid scent. "Samantha, gather everything. We're leaving," Catherine instructed, helping the engineer collect their materials and equipment. Bennett led them to what appeared to be a storage closet at the back of his office. Inside, behind shelving units, was another door. He swiped the key card and the door slid open, revealing a narrow corridor. "This way," he said, leading them into the passageway. "The service elevator is at the end of this hall." The corridor was dimly lit by emergency lighting, casting long shadows as they moved quickly toward the elevator. Catherine took up the rear position, constantly checking behind them for pursuit. The sound of the fire alarm was muffled here, creating an eerie backdrop to their escape. They reached the service elevator, a utilitarian metal box designed for function rather than aesthetics. Bennett swiped his card again, and the doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. "Where are we going?" Samantha asked as they entered the elevator. "Basement level 3, Bennett answered, pressing the button. "It connects to a service tunnel that leads to the parking garage across the street. We can exit there without being seen by whoever is watching the main entrance." The elevator began its descent, the floors ticking by on the digital display. 50, 49, 48. "Once we're clear of the building, we go directly to the FBI field office," Bennett continued. "I have contacts there who can take our evidence and provide protection until the board meeting." "Assuming we make it that far," Catherine said quietly. 25, 24, 23. "We'll make it," Bennett assured her. "The security team is already en route. The local police have been notified. Whoever is behind this has overplayed their hand." 10, 9, 8. "Maybe," Catherine acknowledged. "Or maybe this is exactly what they wanted, to force us out of the building with the evidence, to expose us." 3, 2, 1. "Either way," Bennett said grimly, "we're about to find out." The elevator slowed as it approached the basement levels. B1, B2, B3. The doors opened to reveal a concrete service corridor lit by fluorescent lights that flickered intermittently. The air was cool and damp, smelling of oil and machinery. "This way," Bennett directed, leading them down the corridor. "The tunnel entrance is about 100 yards ahead." They moved quickly but cautiously, Catherine constantly scanning for threats. The corridor was lined with pipes and electrical conduits, creating numerous shadows and potential hiding places. "Stop," Catherine said suddenly, her voice low and urgent. "Listen." They froze, straining to hear over the distant sound of the fire alarm still blaring above them. There it was, footsteps, coming from the direction they were headed. "Back," Catherine ordered. "Find cover." They retreated to a recessed maintenance bay where large pipes created a natural hiding place. Seconds later, two men in black tactical gear appeared at the far end of the corridor. Each carried a submachine gun, moving with the practiced precision of professional operators. "Those aren't security guards," Bennett whispered. "Not ours, anyway." "Military trained," Catherine agreed, recognizing their movement patterns. "Mercenaries most likely." The men advanced slowly, sweeping their weapons across the corridor as they moved. Communication devices in their ears, body armor under their black clothing. These weren't opportunists. This was a professional hit team. Catherine assessed their options quickly. The elevator behind them would take too long to recall, and the noise would give away their position. The corridor ahead was blocked by the armed men. They were effectively trapped. "Give me your phone," Catherine whispered to Bennett. When he handed her the satellite device, she spoke rapidly into it. "Security team, this is Major Catherine Calloway, USAF. We have armed hostiles in basement level 3. At least 2 men with automatic weapons. Request immediate assistance and police response." As she spoke, her free hand moved to her messenger bag, retrieving the compact sidearm from its hidden compartment. Bennett's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the weapon, but he nodded in understanding. This was no longer just an investigation. It was combat. "Samantha," Catherine whispered, "when I engage, you and Bennett head back to the elevator. Get to the surface. Get the evidence to the authorities." "What about you?" Samantha asked, her face pale with fear. "I'll keep them busy," Catherine replied with the calm certainty of a fighter pilot who had faced death before. "Go on my signal." The armed men were drawing closer, now only about 30 yards away. Catherine took a deep breath, centered herself as she did before combat missions, and prepared to move. "Now," she whispered. In one fluid motion, Catherine emerged from cover, weapon raised in a perfect two-handed grip. "Armed federal agent," she shouted, "drop your weapons." The injured man recovered quickly, bringing his weapon up despite his wound. Catherine dove for cover as bullets tore into the concrete wall behind her. The confined space amplified the sound of gunfire to deafening levels. From her position behind a large pipe junction, Catherine returned fire in controlled bursts, keeping the men pinned down while Bennett and Samantha reached the elevator. She saw Bennett slam his hand against the call button, then pull Samantha behind a concrete pillar for protection. The elevator would take precious seconds to arrive, seconds they might not have. Catherine made a rapid decision. She would advance, drawing fire away from Bennett and Samantha. It was tactically unsound, increasing her personal risk, but it would give them the best chance to escape with the evidence. "Cover your ears," she shouted, then fired 3 rapid shots at a steam pipe near the attacker's position. The pipe ruptured with a deafening hiss, filling the corridor with billowing white steam that provided instant concealment. Using the cover, Catherine moved forward in a crouch, flanking the attacker's position. Through the steam, she could make out their silhouettes, disoriented and trying to regroup. The elevator dinged behind her. Bennett and Samantha would be escaping now. One of the attackers turned toward the sound. Catherine fired again, forcing him back into cover. "Federal agent," she shouted again, "drop your weapons or I will use lethal force." Instead of complying, both men opened fire in her direction, bullets ricocheting off pipes and concrete. Catherine pressed herself against a pillar, feeling the impact of rounds striking inches from her position. The steam was beginning to dissipate. Her cover was deteriorating, but she had accomplished her objective. Bennett and Samantha would be in the elevator now, ascending to safety with the evidence. Catherine took a deep breath, centered herself again, and prepared to withdraw. She had done what fighter pilots rarely could do on a mission gone wrong. She had secured the package, completed the objective. Everything else was secondary. As she began to move back toward the elevator, a new sound reached her ears. The heavy metal door at the far end of the corridor slammed open. More footsteps, more threats incoming. Catherine braced herself for a final stand, low on ammunition, outnumbered, cornered. But then she heard the authoritative shout, "FBI, drop your weapons, hands where we can see them." The cavalry had arrived. In the confusion that followed, Catherine maintained her position, identifying herself clearly to the FBI tactical team that swarmed the corridor. The 2 attackers, finding themselves outgunned and surrounded, surrendered without further resistance. As agents secured the scene, Catherine approached the FBI team leader, a stern-faced woman in tactical gear with Henderson emblazoned on her vest. "Major Catherine Calloway," she introduced herself. "United States Air Force, Special Investigation." Agent Henderson nodded in recognition. "Mr. Bennett briefed us on the situation while you were keeping our friends busy down here." She gestured to the 2 men now being handcuffed and led away. "Professional contractors, expensive ones." "Any ID?" "None yet," Henderson replied. "But they'll talk. They always do when facing federal terrorism charges." "This wasn't terrorism," Catherine corrected. "This was corporate espionage. Maybe treason, depending on who was paying them." "Either way, they're looking at a long time in a small room," Henderson said grimly. "Your colleagues are upstairs with the rest of my team. They're secure, and so is their evidence." Catherine felt relief wash over her. The mission parameters had been met. The package was secure. Now they just had to make it to the board meeting and present their findings. As she followed Agent Henderson to another elevator, one used by the FBI team to access the basement, Catherine's mind was already racing ahead to the next phase. This attack proved they were on the right track. Someone was desperate to prevent their evidence from reaching the board. Someone with resources. Someone with connections to hire professional mercenaries. Someone who was still out there, still dangerous, and now cornered with nothing left to lose. The elevator doors closed, carrying Catherine up toward what she knew would be only the next battle in this unexpected war. Meanwhile, across the city, in a luxury apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, Derek Vaughn answered his secure phone with trembling hands. "It failed," he said simply. "The FBI has them and the evidence." The voice that responded was calm, controlled, and terrifying in its certainty. "Then we move to contingency plan B. The board meeting cannot proceed tomorrow." "What are you suggesting?" Derek asked, his voice catching. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with," the voice replied. "Your part in this is over, Mr. Vaughn. I suggest you use the time you have remaining to get your affairs in order." The line went dead, leaving Derek alone with the knowledge that he had become expendable. And in his line of work, expendable assets were disposed of with cold efficiency. The real mastermind was cutting ties, eliminating liabilities. And Derek Vaughn had just become the biggest liability of all. Dawn broke over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. From the window of the FBI field office's conference room, Catherine Calloway watched the sun rise over Lake Michigan, casting long shadows across the city. Her city, for now. Her battlefield. She hadn't slept. None of them had. The night had been filled with debriefings, evidence documentation, and preparation for the board meeting that was now just 2 hours away. Her flight jacket hung on the back of a chair, the familiar weight of it a reminder of who she was and why she was here. Behind her, the conference room hummed with activity. FBI agents coordinated security for the upcoming meeting. Samantha Briggs worked with computer forensics specialists to verify and secure their evidence. Harold Bennett spoke quietly on a secure line to someone in Washington, his expression grave. "Major Calloway." Catherine turned to find Agent Henderson approaching, a tablet in her hand. "We've identified the men from last night," the FBI agent said, offering the tablet. "Former special forces, now private military contractors working for a shell company called Artemis Security Solutions." Catherine studied the information. 2 faces, 2 names, 2 military records that mirrored her own in many ways, warriors who had chosen a different path after their service. "Any connection to Meridian?" she asked. "Nothing direct," Henderson admitted. "But Artemis received a wire transfer of $200,000 3 days ago from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. We're still tracing the origin." "And Derek Vaughn?" "In custody as of 30 minutes ago," Henderson confirmed. "Picked him up at his apartment. He was packing a bag, had a ticket to Buenos Aires leaving this morning." Catherine nodded, unsurprised, running scared. "Very," Henderson agreed. "He's already asking about a deal, says he has information about bigger players involved." That confirmed Catherine's suspicion. Derek wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn, a well-paid, willing pawn, but a pawn nonetheless. "What kind of bigger players?" Catherine asked. "He's being vague, trying to maximize his bargaining position," Henderson replied. "But he mentioned foreign interests, and someone inside the Department of Defense." Catherine felt a chill run down her spine. If a duty official was involved, this went beyond corporate espionage or profit motive. This was potentially treason, a deliberate attempt to compromise American air superiority by sabotaging pilot training. The board meeting needs to proceed as scheduled, Catherine said decisively. With everything we've learned, everything we can prove. Whatever Derek knows, whatever he's hiding, the full story needs to come out today. Henderson nodded in agreement. We'll get you there, full tactical escort. The building has already been swept and secured. Bennett approached, having concluded his call. That was General Hollister, he said quietly. He's bringing in Air Force Office of Special Investigations. This is officially a matter of national security now. Did you tell him about the duty connection? Catherine asked. Yes, Bennett confirmed grimly. He wasn't surprised, said there have been suspicions about a mole in the procurement division for months, nothing they could prove until now. Samantha joined them, her laptop under her arm. The forensic team has verified our findings. The evidence is solid. Deliberate modification of the flight model to create deadly flaws, unauthorized use of credentials, the connection to the 3 crashes. She looked exhausted but determined. They can't dismiss this. Catherine checked her watch. We move in 90 minutes. Everyone get ready. As the others dispersed to make final preparations, Catherine returned to the window. The city was fully awake now, people moving through the streets below, unaware of the danger that had been growing in their midst, unaware of how close someone had come to compromising American air power through sabotage training. 3 pilots dead already. How many more would have died if the sabotaged simulators had been deployed throughout the Air Force? Dozens, hundreds. The best pilots in the world, systematically trained to kill themselves by trusting machines programmed to lie. Catherine's reflection stared back at her from the glass. Tired eyes in a face that had seen combat, made life-or-death decisions at supersonic speeds. She had never expected to fight this kind of battle, but she was uniquely qualified for it. A fighter pilot who understood both the technical and human elements of aviation, who knew what it meant to trust your life to technology. It was time to complete the mission. The convoy departed the FBI field office at precisely 8:15 a.m. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, moving in tight formation through the morning traffic. Catherine sat in the middle vehicle with Bennett and Samantha, surrounded by FBI agents. Her messenger bag contained the secure tablet with all their evidence, backed up and verified. The board has been notified that we're coming with a security escort, Bennett explained as they navigated the downtown streets. They've been told only that there was an incident at the building last night that raises security concerns. How did they react? Catherine asked. With appropriate alarm, Bennett said, and they've agreed to clear the boardroom of all but essential personnel, just the directors, you, me, and Samantha. What about security within the room? Catherine asked, her tactical mind still assessing threats. 2 of our agents will be inside, Henderson assured her from the front seat. Another 6 securing the floor. We're taking no chances after last night. Catherine nodded, satisfied with the precautions, but a sense of unease still nagged at her. If someone within the Department of Defense was involved, someone with enough power and influence to orchestrate this conspiracy, they wouldn't surrender easily. There would be contingencies, backup plans. The convoy turned onto the street where Meridian Defense Systems headquarters stood gleaming in the morning sun. The building appeared normal, employees streaming through the main entrance, unaware of the drama about to unfold in the boardroom 50 floors above. The SUVs pulled into the private underground garage reserved for executives. A team of FBI agents was already in position, securing the area. Henderson led them to a private elevator that would take them directly to the executive floor. Building security has been cooperative, Henderson informed them as the elevator ascended. They've provided access to all systems and camera feeds. So far, everything appears normal. Catherine remained silent, eyes fixed on the floor indicator as the numbers climbed. 20, 25, 30, each floor bringing them closer to a confrontation that could expose a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of defense procurement. When the elevator reached the 50th floor, Henderson exited first, scanning the corridor before signaling the others to follow. 2 more FBI agents waited outside the boardroom doors, positions that allowed them to observe all approaches. "The board is assembled," one agent reported. "All members accounted for. Room has been swept for devices. Clean." Henderson nodded. "We go in now. Standard protocol. I'll make introductions, explain the security situation, then turn it over to you." She looked at Catherine, Bennett, and Samantha. "Ready?" They nodded, faces set with determination. The boardroom was impressive even by corporate standards. A massive oval table of polished mahogany dominated the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Chicago. Around the table sat 12 men and women in expensive suits, the directors of Meridian Defense Systems. Their expressions ranged from concern to annoyed at the security presence. At the head of the table sat an older man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. Gerald Harrington, founder and chairman of Meridian. His face was a careful mask of corporate neutrality as the group entered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Henderson began, her voice carrying the authority of the federal government. "I'm Special Agent Henderson, FBI. Thank you for accommodating our security procedures this morning. As you've been informed, there was a serious incident at this building last night that necessitates these precautions." "What kind of incident?" Harrington asked, his voice deep and measured. "We were told very little." "An armed assault on 3 individuals investigating critical flaws in your flight simulator program," Henderson stated bluntly. 2 mercenaries with military-grade weapons attempted to prevent this evidence from reaching this room today." Murmurs of shock rippled around the table. Harrington's expression remained unchanged, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the arms of his chair. "I'll now turn this over to Major Catherine Calloway of the United States Air Force, who will explain the full situation." Catherine stepped forward, standing at the foot of the table where all could see her. In her flight jacket, surrounded by corporate executives, she was a stark contrast to the room's polished luxury. But power emanated from her stance, the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death and prevailed. "Chairman Harrington, members of the board," she began, her voice clear and steady. "3 days ago, I was sent to Meridian Defense Systems to investigate potentially deadly flaws in your FX-200 flight simulator. What I discovered goes far beyond software errors or negligence. The evidence I'm about to present proves deliberate sabotage designed to kill American fighter pilots." The reaction was immediate. Several board members visibly recoiled. Others leaned forward, expressions hardening with disbelief or concern. Harrington remained perfectly still, only his eyes moving as they fixed on Catherine with laser intensity. Samantha connected her laptop to the room's projection system. The main screen lit up with the first slide of their presentation. The FX-200 simulator contains systematic modifications to its flight model that teach pilots they can safely perform maneuvers that would, in reality, result in catastrophic loss of control, Catherine explained. These modifications were implemented over 8 months, deliberately hidden within routine updates, and approved using stolen credentials. She proceeded methodically through the evidence, using the language of the boardroom rather than the cockpit. Facts, data, timelines, the correlation between simulator training and the 3 fatal crashes, the documented use of Robert Park's credentials after his departure, the unauthorized access to his workspace using Bennett's forged approval. With each slide, the board's reaction shifted from disbelief to grim acceptance. Several directors were taking notes furiously. Others sat in stunned silence. Last night, Catherine continued, when we had compiled sufficient evidence to present to this board, armed men attempted to prevent us from leaving the building with that evidence. They were professionally trained mercenaries hired through an offshore account. And this morning, your director of simulation systems, Derek Vaughn, was apprehended attempting to flee the country. That revelation caused visible shock. A woman near the middle of the table, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob, spoke up. "Derek is involved in this. That's impossible." "I'm afraid the evidence is conclusive, Director Walsh," Bennett responded. "Derek approved the modifications that caused these crashes. He used stolen credentials to hide his actions. And when we uncovered his involvement, he attempted to destroy the evidence and hired mercenaries to stop us." "But why?" another director asked. "What possible motive could he have?" Catherine met the man's gaze directly. "That's the question we need to answer. Because the evidence suggests Derek wasn't working alone. The financial resources, the technical sophistication, the targeting of specific aircraft and maneuvers. This operation has all the hallmarks of state-sponsored sabotage." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. State-sponsored sabotage, foreign interference, treason. Catherine continued, "We believe someone with access to Department of Defense procurement was collaborating with Derek to ensure these flawed simulators were deployed throughout the Air Force training program. The potential damage to our air combat readiness would have been catastrophic." Harrington finally broke his silence. "These are extraordinary accusations, Major Calloway. If true, they represent the most serious breach in this company's history." His eyes narrowed slightly. "But I must ask, what evidence do you have linking these modifications to foreign interests or duty personnel? It seems equally possible that Derek acted alone, perhaps selling information or access independently." The question was precise, probing for weakness in their case. Catherine recognized the tactic from countless mission debriefings. Find the gap in the intelligence. Exploit uncertainty. "Derek Vaughn is currently being questioned by federal authorities," Catherine replied evenly. "His financial records show irregular deposits from offshore accounts totaling over $3 million in the past year. Those deposits align perfectly with the timeline of the simulator modifications." "And the duty connection," Harrington pressed. "The modified flight model specifically targets advanced maneuvers being developed for the F-35 program," Catherine explained. "Maneuvers that aren't public knowledge. Someone with access to classified flight test data provided the parameters for these modifications." Catherine watched Harrington carefully as she delivered this information. His expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Concern. It was too subtle to interpret with confidence. "What do you need from this board?" Harrington asked after a moment. "Full cooperation with the federal investigation," Bennett answered. "Complete access to all systems, records, and personnel, and immediate recall of any FX-200 simulators already deployed." Harrington nodded slowly. "You shall have it. Meridian Defense Systems will cooperate fully with all aspects of the investigation." He looked around the table. "I believe I speak for the entire board when I say that if these allegations prove true, we want those responsible held accountable to the fullest extent of the law." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. Directors nodded solemnly. The corporate machine was already adapting, distancing itself from the scandal, positioning for damage control. "Thank you, Chairman Harrington," Catherine said. "There's one more thing we believe." The lights in the boardroom suddenly went out. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, but the main power was gone. The presentation screen went dark. The room's electronic door locks clicked as they defaulted to secure mode. "Everyone stay calm," Henderson commanded, hand moving to her weapon. "Standard power failure protocol." But Catherine knew this was no standard power failure. Not after last night, not with the pattern of escalation they had witnessed. Her eyes met Bennett's across the table. He nodded once, understanding without words. This was another attack, another attempt to silence them. Agent Henderson was already on her radio. "Status report, all positions." The response came through with electronic clarity. "Power failure on executive level only. Rest of building normal. Security systems compromised. Unknown individuals moving on your position from the east stairwell." "How many?" Henderson demanded. "At least 4, armed." Catherine's mind shifted instantly to combat mode, assessing the tactical situation, identifying threats, assets, and vulnerabilities. The boardroom was now a potential kill box. One entrance, windows that wouldn't break without specialized equipment, 12 civilian board members who would become either hostages or casualties if the room was breached. "We need to move," Catherine said decisively, "now before they reach this position." Henderson nodded in agreement. Secondary evacuation route. Bennett pointed to a door partially hidden in the wood paneling at the far end of the room. "Chairman's private exit. Leads to a secure elevator that connects directly to the parking garage." "All directors move toward that exit," Henderson ordered. "My agents will escort you to secure vehicles." The board members rose quickly, professional composure giving way to genuine fear. Catherine noticed that Harrington remained seated, watching the activity with an odd detachment. "Chairman Harrington," Catherine said sharply, "we need to evacuate." "Of course," he replied, finally standing, "though I think perhaps we're overreacting to a simple power failure." 4 armed men approaching this position is not a simple power failure, Catherine countered. "It's a coordinated attack." Something in Harrington's expression shifted. A coldness entered his eyes. "Indeed it is, Major Calloway, though not perhaps the attack you imagine." The hidden door swung open, but instead of offering escape, 3 men in tactical gear stepped through, weapons raised. Not FBI, not building security, professionals like the men from the night before. "Nobody move," the lead man ordered. Catherine froze, assessing the new threat. 3 armed hostiles at the rear door. Henderson and her agent at the main entrance, weapons drawn but outnumbered. 12 terrified board members caught in the middle. And Chairman Harrington, standing calmly amidst the chaos, looking not at all surprised by this development. Gerald, one of the female directors, gasped, "What is this?" "Insurance, Patricia," Harrington replied calmly, "against precisely the situation we now face." He turned to Catherine. "You've been quite thorough, Major Calloway, more so than we anticipated. It's actually rather impressive." Understanding dawned with cold clarity. "It was you," Catherine said, "not Derek. You're the one connected to the duty." Harrington inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the accusation without explicitly confirming it. Derek was useful, ambitious, easily tempted by money, but ultimately limited in his vision. "Vision," Bennett interjected, his voice tight with controlled rage. "You call sabotaging aircraft simulators to kill pilots a vision?" "I call it necessary realignment," Harrington replied coldly. America has grown complacent in its air superiority. Decades without a peer competitor has made the Air Force soft, overconfident. His eyes hardened. Sometimes progress requires sacrifice. "You're insane," Samantha whispered, clutching her laptop against her chest like a shield. "On the contrary, Ms. Briggs, I'm entirely rational," Harrington gestured to the armed men. "Secure their weapons and devices, quickly." The men moved forward, efficiently disarming Henderson and the other FBI agent. One approached Catherine, reaching for her messenger bag. She surrendered it without resistance, knowing that direct confrontation now would only endanger the civilians in the room. "The evidence won't disappear, Harrington," Catherine said calmly. "It's been verified by the FBI, backed up to secure servers. Killing us won't change that." "Killing you is not the objective, Major," Harrington replied, "though it remains an option if necessary." He checked his watch. "In approximately 2 minutes, a cascading system failure will affect all FBI servers that received your data last night. A rather elegant virus that Derek unwittingly installed months ago. As for witnesses," he gestured around the boardroom, "I think we can reach an understanding with my fellow directors about the narrative moving forward." Catherine studied the armed men, noting their positions, their stance, their level of alertness. Professional but not military precision. Private contractors like the ones from the previous night. Skilled but not special forces caliber. She glanced at Henderson, communicating silently. The FBI agent gave an almost imperceptible nod. They would wait for an opportunity, create one if necessary. "Why the simulators?" Catherine asked, keeping Harrington talking. "Why not sabotage the actual aircraft?" "Too direct, too traceable," Harrington explained, warming to the topic despite the circumstances. "But the simulators, elegant. Pilots trained to trust their instincts. When those instincts are systematically corrupted, they become their own worst enemies. They fly perfectly functioning aircraft into the ground because they believe with absolute certainty that the maneuver should work." "You've killed 3 pilots already," Bennett said, his voice thick with disgust. "A regrettable necessity," Harrington replied without a hint of remorse. "Phase 1 of the operation. Limited deployment, targeted modifications. Phase 2 would have seen the system deployed across all training facilities. Within 2 years, American air combat effectiveness would have been degraded by at least 30%. "Working for who?" Catherine demanded. "Who paid you to betray your country?" Harrington smiled thinly. "Countries are corporations writ large, Major Calloway, artificial constructs designed to concentrate power and wealth. I serve more fundamental interests." "Money," Catherine concluded. "You did this for money." "Among other considerations," Harrington acknowledged, "though you severely underestimate the amounts involved." Catherine continued to engage him, watching for any opportunity. The armed men had positioned themselves around the room, one guarding the main door, one near Harrington, the third moving among the board members, collecting phones and other devices. "The Dudi will discover your involvement," Catherine said. "Derek will talk. The money trail will lead back to you." "Derek doesn't know who he was really working for," Harrington countered. "And financial forensics take time. Time we won't be giving the authorities." Outside in the corridor, shouting erupted. Gunfire, the cavalry arriving. Harrington's expression tightened. "Accelerated timeline," he said to his men. "Plan B now." The men moved with practiced efficiency. One grabbed Samantha, pulling her roughly toward the hidden door. The second began herding the board members in the same direction. The third maintained his position, covering Henderson and the other FBI agent. "You're coming with us, Major," Harrington said, gesturing for Catherine to follow. "You and Ms. Briggs have become valuable bargaining chips." Catherine stood her ground. No. Harrington's eyes narrowed dangerously. This is not a negotiation. Move now or people start dying. You're not leaving this building, Catherine stated with the calm certainty of a fighter pilot who had calculated the odds and made her decision. The FBI has the building surrounded. Tactical teams are already on this floor. You have nowhere to go. I always have somewhere to go, Major, Harrington replied. That's the benefit of owning the building. He nodded to one of his men. Persuade her. The man raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Bennett's head. Time slowed for Catherine. The world narrowed to the tactical situation before her. Distances, angles, timing. Just like in the cockpit during combat, her mind processed variables at superhuman speed. The gunman's focus was on Bennett. His stance was slightly off balance. The distance between them was approximately 8 feet. Henderson was positioned at her 2 o'clock, tense and ready. The other FBI agent had shifted slightly, drawing attention from the third gunman. Catherine made her decision in milliseconds. With explosive speed, she launched herself forward, using a move straight from Air Force combat training. Her shoulder connected with the gunman's midsection just as he began to turn toward her. The impact drove him backward, his weapon discharging harmlessly into the ceiling. Simultaneously, Henderson moved, tackling the man near the door. The third gunman swung his weapon around, but the FBI agent was faster, driving his elbow into the man's throat before he could fire. Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Directors screamed, ducking under the massive table. Harrington backed toward the hidden door, reaching inside his jacket. Catherine continued her attack, disarming the stunned gunman with a precise strike to his wrist, followed by an elbow to the temple that dropped him to the floor. She grabbed his weapon, rolling to her feet in one fluid motion. Bennett had joined the fight, helping Henderson subdue the second gunman. The third was already unconscious, the FBI agent securing him with zip ties. Catherine turned, weapon raised, to find Harrington at the hidden door, a small pistol in his hand. He fired once, the round passing inches from Catherine's head. She dropped to one knee, returning fire with controlled precision. Harrington staggered backward, his pistol falling from his grasp. He looked down at his chest in shock, at the growing stain of red spreading across his expensive shirt. "You shot me," he said, his voice filled with genuine surprise. "You tried to kill my country's pilots," Catherine replied, keeping the weapon trained on him as she approached. "Did you think I wouldn't shoot back?" Harrington collapsed against the doorframe, sliding slowly to the floor. His eyes remained fixed on Catherine, filled not with pain or fear, but with something closer to professional respect. "You would have made an excellent ally, Major Calloway," he gasped, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "I already have excellent allies," Catherine countered. "They're called Americans." Harrington managed a final bloody smile, so provincial. Then his eyes went blank, staring at nothing. The door to the main corridor burst open as FBI tactical units flooded the room, securing the area and checking the board members for injuries. The firefight in the corridor had ended, the remaining mercenaries either captured or neutralized. Catherine lowered her weapon, suddenly aware of the silence that had fallen over the boardroom. The directors emerged from under the table, staring in shock at the body of their chairman, at the armed men now restrained on the floor, at Catherine Calloway, standing in her flight jacket amid the chaos, calm as if she were still in the cockpit at 40,000 feet. "Is everyone all right?" she asked, her voice steady. Nods, murmured affirmations, the corporate masks beginning to reassert themselves as the immediate danger passed. Bennett approached her, A small cut above his eye, the only sign of his involvement in the fight. Good shooting, Major. Old habits, Catherine replied simply. Samantha was huddled with an FBI agent, visibly shaken but physically unharmed. Her laptop, remarkably, had survived the confrontation intact. The evidence was secure. Agent Henderson joined them, holstering her weapon. Building is secure. We have 3 more suspects in custody from the corridor. Harrington's private elevator was rigged for a rapid descent to a sublevel not on the official blueprints. Escape tunnel leading to the river. He thought of everything, Bennett observed grimly. Almost everything, Catherine corrected, looking at the fallen chairman. He didn't account for someone who would fight back. The following hours passed in a blur of activity. More FBI agents, Air Force OSI personnel, statements taken, evidence secured. Meridian headquarters became the center of a national security investigation that would reach into the highest levels of defense procurement. By evening, Catherine found herself back at the FBI field office, seated in the same conference room where the day had begun. The tablet before her displayed General Hollister on a secure video call, his expression grave but satisfied. "You did outstanding work, Major Calloway," he said. "The evidence is irrefutable. Harrington's foreign connections are already being uncovered. Accounts in Russia, China, North Korea. He was playing all sides against the middle." "And the simulators?" Catherine asked. "All FX-200 units have been taken offline," Hollister confirmed. "A team from Air Force Software Engineering is already developing patches based on Ms. Briggs's documentation. We'll salvage what we can of the technology without the deadly flaws." "The 3 pilots who died," Catherine said quietly. "Their families deserve to know the truth." "They will," Hollister assured her. "Not the classified details, but enough to clear their sons' names. To show they didn't die because of pilot error, but because of deliberate sabotage." Catherine nodded, satisfied. It wouldn't bring them back, but it would restore their honor. For military families, that mattered. "The Dudee Mole?" she asked. Derek mentioned foreign interests and someone inside procurement. Hollister's expression darkened. "Deputy Assistant Secretary Caldwell, Defense Procurement Division. His financial records cracked open inside an hour once we had Harrington's offshore account numbers. He's in federal custody as of 2 hours ago." A pause. 31 years of service, 3 children, and he sold us out for $4 million wired to a Cayman account. The general's voice was flat, the way voices get when disgust has nowhere left to go. "The investigation is clean, Major. All threads cut, it's over." "What about Bennett?" she asked. "Cleared of any involvement," Hollister reported. "In fact, the board has asked him to step in as interim chairman. He's uniquely qualified to guide the company through this crisis." Catherine smiled slightly. "He's a good man, a good leader." "Takes one to know one, Major," Hollister replied with a rare smile of his own. "Your transport back to base leaves at 800 tomorrow. I expect a full debrief when you return." "Yes, sir." After the call ended, Catherine sat alone in the conference room, watching night fall over Chicago. The city lights blinked on, creating a mirror image of the stars hidden by urban glow. So different from the night sky over Afghanistan or Iraq, where she had flown combat missions in the darkness. Different battlefield, same stakes, lives in the balance. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Bennett stood there, still in the same suit from the boardroom, though he had managed to clean up and treat the cut above his eye. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Catherine gestured to a chair. "Of course not." Bennett sat, his movements betraying the fatigue of the day's events. "Hell of a 3 days, Major Calloway." "Catherine," she corrected, I think we're past military formality at this point." Bennett smiled. "Catherine, then, and I'm Harold, not Mr. Bennett." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two warriors who had fought side by side, sharing the unspoken bond that forms in combat. "The board asked me to take over as interim chairman," Bennett finally said. "I heard, congratulations." Bennett shook his head. "Not sure congratulations is the right word. The company is facing the biggest crisis in its history. 3 dead pilots, a chairman exposed as a traitor, simulators that almost compromised national security." "You'll rebuild it," Catherine said with quiet certainty. "You'll make it right." "That's the plan," Bennett agreed. "Starting with a complete overhaul of the flight model. I was hoping you might consider staying on as a consultant. Your expertise would be invaluable." Catherine raised an eyebrow, trying to ground a fighter pilot Bennett. He laughed. "No, just trying to make sure the next generation of pilots gets proper training. Training that keeps them alive instead of killing them." Catherine considered the offer. "I'd have to clear it with my command. This mission was always temporary." "Of course," Bennett nodded. "But think about it. You've got a perspective that most of our engineers lack. You understand both the technology and what it means to trust your life to it at Mach 2. A second knock at the door drew their attention. Samantha Briggs stood there, laptop under her arm as always, but with a new confidence in her stance. "Am I interrupting?" she asked. "Not at all," Catherine assured her. "Come in." Samantha joined them at the table. "I just finished with the FBI cyber team. They've verified all our findings and secured the evidence for prosecution." She looked at Bennett. "They also said you've been named interim chairman. Congratulations, sir." "Thank you, Samantha," Bennett replied. "And my first act as chairman was to approve your promotion to director of flight model development. If you want it, that is." Samantha's eyes widened. "Me, but I'm just a junior engineer." "You're the engineer who identified the flaws when everyone else missed them," Bennett countered. "The engineer who risked her career and her safety to expose the truth. That's exactly who should be leading this department." Samantha was speechless for a moment. Then she nodded, determination replacing surprise. "I'd be honored, sir." "Good," Bennett said with satisfaction, "because I'm also trying to convince Major Calloway to join us as a consultant. The two of you would make a formidable team." Catherine watched the younger woman, seeing the same quality that had first drawn her attention: integrity, courage, commitment to truth regardless of personal cost. "I'd like that," Samantha said, looking at Catherine hopefully. "We could make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Catherine felt something unexpected, a pull toward a mission different from the one she had trained for all her life. Not the adrenaline rush of combat flying, but something perhaps equally important: protecting those who would follow her into the sky. "I'll consider it," she said finally. "But first, I have to report back to base, complete the mission I was sent here to do." Bennett nodded understanding. "Of course, the offer remains open." As twilight deepened outside the windows, the three of them sat together in companionable silence. Different backgrounds, different skills, united by the crucible of the past 3 days. Catherine's thoughts turned to the simulator bay where this had all begun, to the deadly perfection of a machine designed to teach pilots to kill themselves, to the 3 young men who had died trusting technology that betrayed them, and to the sky where she belonged, the vast, unforgiving, magnificent sky that had been her home for over a decade, where split-second decisions meant life or death, where instinct and training merged into something approaching art. The mission was complete, the threat neutralized, But Catherine Calloway knew that other threats would emerge. Other missions would require her unique skills. Whether in the cockpit or on the ground, the battle to protect American air superiority would continue. And she would be ready, always ready. It was what fighter pilots did. The flight jacket hanging on her chair was more than clothing. It was identity, purpose, belonging. Wherever she went next, whatever mission she accepted, she would carry with her the silent understanding of all who had earned their wings. Some people spend a lifetime searching for the place where they are most completely themselves. Catherine Calloway had found it at 35,000 feet in a machine that cost $80 million and weighed less than the responsibility she carried in it. The sky didn't care about your rank or your reputation. It rewarded precision, honesty, commitment. The sky always told the truth. Which was exactly why she was so dangerous to people who built machines designed to lie. One mission complete, another waiting on the horizon. Just another day for the woman in the flight jacket. A note from the author. Thank you for reading. If you've made it to the end of this story, you already know something important about yourself. You still believe in heroes. I wrote this story for readers like you, people who grew up watching the best of America strap into cockpits and fly toward danger without hesitation. People who remember what it felt like when honor meant something, when a uniform commanded respect, when the words duty and sacrifice weren't just words on a wall somewhere, but a way of life that real men and women chose every single day. Catherine Calloway isn't just a character to me, she's a tribute. She represents every pilot, every soldier, every intelligence officer who has ever walked into a room where they didn't belong, in clothes that didn't fit the setting, carrying skills that most people around them couldn't begin to understand and held their ground anyway. Quietly, professionally, without needing anyone's approval. The threat in this story, flawed simulators designed to betray the pilots who trusted them, is fictional. But the heart of it isn't. The real danger has always been the same. When those in positions of power put money, ambition, or foreign interests above the lives of the men and women who protect us. Catherine's mission is to find those people and stop them. And she does it not with politics or speeches, but with evidence, instinct, and when necessary, with the same precision she brings to every other decision in her life. I also wrote this story because I believe that experience matters, that a lifetime of watching the world teaches you things that no classroom ever can. Catherine isn't young and reckless. She's seasoned, disciplined, and precise, the product of years of hard-won wisdom. That's not a limitation. That's the most dangerous thing in any room. The enemies in this story were counting on her to hesitate, to defer, to go through channels. They forgot that the best pilots don't hesitate. They assess, they decide, and they act. Samantha Briggs is the next generation, brilliant, brave, willing to risk everything for what's right even when no one is backing her up. Harold Bennett is the leader who never forgot where he came from, no matter how high he climbed. And Catherine is the bridge between all of it. The woman who has seen the worst of what people can do, and still chooses, every single time, to fight for the best of what America can be. 3 pilots died trusting technology that was designed to kill them. Their names were cleared by the end of this story. Their families will know the truth. That matters to me, and I suspect it matters to you too, because some of you have known men and women like them. Some of you have folded those flags yourselves. If this story moved you, made you proud, or reminded you why you've always believed in the people who wear the uniform, then I've done my job. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Because they do. They're usually just too busy doing the work to make noise about it. Until the next mission, thank you for flying with Catherine.